to hop on to talk about being cognizant about where we get our information and advice. And what sparked this was I drove home to visit my parents over the past week, but we watched the new PBS version of this show called All Creatures Great and Small, which is charming. Highly recommend it. But in the first episode, this young man, James Harriet, went to school to be a veterinarian and is putting out all kinds of feelers and applying everywhere and just not having any luck, not getting any jobs. And his mother saying to him, well, it was nice to have a dream, but I've kind of said all along that this, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but I've kind of said all along that this was never really going to happen. It was a pipe dream. You need to get a job down in the docks with your father. And obviously part of it is funny because the idea of like being a veterinarian today being a pipe dream, or even maybe even then being a pipe dream, is such a funny thing. You would never think like, well, you'll never be a veterinarian, you'll never have any luck. But the problem is that people give us advice or people give us their opinions based on their narrow view of the world. Not necessarily based on what's really possible in the world, but based on their narrow view of the world. And in this character's mom's view, dock work is dependable and realistic. Veterinary work is practically impossible. And what that sparked for me is that idea that I think a lot of us hear from people who often care a great deal about us, who try to dissuade us from freelance work because in their view of the world, their narrow view of the world, they've never seen anybody be successful as a freelancer, or maybe they've only seen people struggle as freelancers. But what I want to remind you is that that's only their narrow view of the world. There are plenty of successful freelancers who are thriving and having very, very successful careers in all different fields, freelancing in all different types of industries. But I think that the people love to give opinions, and but those opinions are always based on their own frame of reference. And the thing that we have to be careful of is to not take, and I'm going to say this gently because again, I know that a lot of these people love us, our parents, our significant others, whatever. The thing that we have to be careful about is to not take advice from people who don't really know what they're talking about. If there's one piece of advice that I have learned and really taken to heart, it's to only listen to only take advice from people who have been successful at what I want to do. Because the people who have not been successful at what I want to do, or the people who haven't even tried it, they don't have anything to offer me. I only want to learn from the successful people, right? Which makes sense. If you are having trouble in your marriage, don't take advice from your perpetually single friend. If you are trying to get in shape, don't take advice from your Uncle Phil who only ever sits on the sofa every night or every weekend or whatever and doesn't do anything. And this can be really hard because there are a lot of people out there with a lot of opinions. And I want to remind you too that I actually posted this on my own Facebook story or my own Instagram story because I'm just always kind of amazed by it. But there are so many people out there who, because they have not been able to be successful at something, they are adamant that it's an impossibility. Just because they haven't been able to do it, it's impossible for anyone. And that's not the case. I mean, when you really step back from that, often people aren't successful because they didn't have the right tactics, they didn't have the right tools, they didn't have the right strategies. Just because one person hasn't been able to make something work doesn't mean that it's impossible. So that's something I want you to keep in your mind too, as you mention that you're getting into freelance work, that you're moving into a freelance career, or you're starting to take on freelance work. There will always be a lot of people who have a lot of opinions, and just be aware that just because someone has an opinion, you don't have to internalize it. And again, it may not necessarily be objectively true. Just because it's your mom's opinion or your wife's opinion or your husband's opinion or whomever's opinion, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's objectively true. So just remember that people are giving advice and giving their opinions from their own little frame of reference, and there's a whole big world out there. And it can be hard, but sometimes the best thing for us is to listen to what people have to say and then let it go. If they're not successful at what we want to be doing, thank you. Thanks for your opinion, and just let it go. And instead focus on getting information and getting opinions and getting advice and getting support and all that kind of stuff from people who are successful, who are and have been successful at what we want to be successful at. So that's my little thought for the day and something I wanted to be sure to share with you guys.